Hey, you guys, welcome back to Racket City Yardstead. So, I don't know if you can tell by my clothes, but the temperature has definitely changed. So, it's only supposed to get up to around 60 degrees today, and we have a frost advisory. So, those rumors last week were true, and it's time to pull everything out of the garden. I didn't pick everything yesterday because I wasn't feeling all that great. I have a bit of an earache and a sore throat. Um, but I was really glad the garden survived overnight because I woke up this morning to lots of people in my area posting about having frost. So I'm grateful that my garden didn't have that and I can get out here today and get everything harvested that needs to be harvested. There are some plants that I want to try and protect, like my squash plants, because their flowers just started opening today. So if we can get those through the frost tonight, then the 2-week forecast doesn't have any more temperatures close to frost. So I think we might actually be able to get some squash. So yeah, it's just going to be a day of harvesting all the peppers and tomatoes, eggplants. I think that's mostly what I have. I am also going to try and cover up my sweet potato vines because I would really like them to have those extra couple of weeks. Um, but otherwise, it's just going to be a harvest palooza today. So let's get to picking. They're nice sized peppers, even if they are green. And some of them look like maybe they're a little yellow, so they might still ripen. Not all of them, but maybe some. The one thing I will say about frost is you can be a little rougher with your plants. You don't have to worry so much about pulling stems off. It is a bit harder to see the peppers because they're matching their leaves at the moment, but we'll get them all. I did want to show you guys peppers like this guy that are really quite small, or like this little pepper. I think I'm going to leave those on because they're not really going to provide me much food. And if we do survive the frost, I'm going to die with the frost. If my plants do survive the night, then those would still have a couple weeks. They could actually get bigger and give us some food. This is one of those things where I feel like you get to a different angle and you see more food. So these peppers are going to take me a while, but that's okay. We're going to be grateful for every bit of food we get to put up. I grabbed a box for harvesting tomatoes, so we will just go through and pick all of them. I will say there are some that are small and they're not even shiny yet. They're still kind of matte. I think I'm going to leave those on. And again, hope the frost doesn't get us. But I don't really know if those are even good to eat yet. So we'll just leave them. I do have tomatoes that are a bit yellow on here. Some of them with a little bit of red. And so those will be able to let ripen. But I just don't know how many of them have started ripening. I think there's a good deal of green tomatoes on here. So I will say with my tomatillos failing me this year, it has kind of worked out that I'm going to have green tomatoes because we can make green salsa with tomatoes and we'll just use it in applications where we would have used the salsa verde. I do want to show you guys, my tomatoes did poorly this year, and these are still pretty small, which I find is fairly common for end of season tomatoes, but they have color on them, and these are the first Cherokee purples I've gotten this year, so we'll be able to let those ripen inside. So I thought I would show you guys some of those tomatoes I was talking about leaving. They're still small, they're kind of dull in color, and they're actually a little bit fuzzy. I found one of these tomatoes that I was talking about, trying to not put it in shade, but can you see how it's a little bit fuzzy? They kind of sparkle, the fuzzy pieces, and how it's just kind of dull. So these are the tomatoes I'm leaving, and we're going to hope the frost passes us. One of the reasons that I feel a little bit hopeful about the frost issue is because, as you can see behind me, I have this big brick wall on my garage that's just a couple feet away from my row of tomatoes, and it stores a lot of heat. When you walk past it, it's several degrees warmer than if you're out in the middle of the yard. And so it makes a little bit of a microclimate. And so I'm hopeful, if it's just a light frost, because we're only supposed to get down to about 36 tonight, that it will be enough to keep these tomato plants going. Only time will tell, but there's just not a whole lot I can do with those tomatoes that small anyway. And so I think it's worth trying to leave them on and see if they'll be able to make it a couple more weeks. So I did want to show you guys these tiny little green beans I picked, because they're hilarious. I wouldn't normally pick them this small, but if it does freeze tonight, they're just going to be mush anyway, so we can throw them in with some other stuff and have some food. But I'm going to show you the plants. They're covered in flowers, so if they survive, we'll get plenty more green beans. So here are green beans and green bean flowers. I'm zoomed in pretty far, so that little green bean is quite tiny, but it just goes up, and there are a lot of flowers on here. So hopefully they'll make it. Time to pick the hot peppers. These are so funny. I have these tiny little poblanos, but I will roast them and chop them up like green chilies. So even little ones are definitely worth keeping. These plants did well early in the year, and then just started putting on quite small started putting on quite small peppers. And so my thought here is that I'm definitely having some deficiency in my soil, and it used up all of the fertilizer I added, and then the soil just wasn't enough to keep things going, the nutrition in the soil. So Prime Day, you guys know Prime Day was a couple days ago, last week. I guess it was maybe last week. And I got one of those nicer soil test kits that you send off, and they send you a really detailed analysis of what you need. So once the plants really are done and it's time to clean up the beds, I will take the landscape fabric off and we'll do that soil test together. But I'm hoping to find out exactly what I need to do to get my soil healthier. I will say I absolutely loved having this landscape fabric in this bed. It made a huge difference with the weed pressure, and I will 100% use landscape fabric here again. There are so many flowers on these plants, it kills me. You guys ever been to Disney World? And oh, what is that ride called? It's at Epcot Center. Living with the Land, that's what it's called. And you ride the boat through. If you've never been, look up a YouTube video. In fact, I'll see if I can find one and I'll link it in the description. But you ride through all their hydroponic areas. And if I remember correctly, they actually use the food in their restaurants. But the pepper plants are in greenhouses. And so they are perennials there, and they look like trees, and they're just the most amazing thing. And every time I get to this part of the season where I know my pepper plants are about to die, I think about that ride and those pepper plants and think, man, if only. Do you guys know that meme that says if I won the lottery, there would be signs? I wouldn't tell anybody, but there would be signs. That might be the sign if I won the lottery, that I had somewhere to keep my pepper plants. Definitely got to get the eggplants off. They're fairly small, but they're beautiful. So we'll take whatever food the garden wants to give us. So the last thing I need to do as far as harvesting goes of food, I definitely want to pick some flowers before I go in, is that I need to pick the cherry tomatoes that are blushing. Now, I know lots of people like things like pickled green cherry tomatoes. I'm just not a fan, honestly. And yeah, I just haven't found anything that I really enjoy that uses green cherry tomatoes. And so we're going to leave those. I'm only going to pick the ones that are blushing. And then if by some miracle we miss the frost tonight because my cherry tomatoes are not in super protected places, then maybe we get some more ripe cherry tomatoes. But otherwise, I'm good. We've had plenty of cherry tomatoes this year. So I'm going to get to picking the ones that are blushing, and then I'll move on to covering everything that I plan on trying to protect through the frost. There are a lot of cherry tomatoes with color on them too. Some of them are just barely a tinge yellow, but that's all they need to finish ripening inside, in my experience. So, and I may get a few that are still actually completely green, but that's okay. I just switched sides I'm picking cherry tomatoes from and spotted another eggplant from this angle. So I'm glad I needed to pick tomatoes. We don't want to let any of our eggplants go to waste. There's quite a bit of shade, so I don't know how well you guys will be able to see, but there are those squash flowers I was talking about. And here is another little baby squash on this plant right there. So I'm definitely going to cover these, and I just thought I'd show you what I'm going to do here. So here you can see I have this plastic pot. I actually got several of these a few years ago when we planted some bushes, but I reuse them for planting flowers in every year. But in this instance, I'm moving it here in between my squash plants just to add a little bit of height to help hold my fabric up off the plants a little bit. And then I have this big sheet of Agribon. It's just a frost fabric. I got it on Amazon, but I've been using it for years and it's held up pretty well. This particular sheet has several holes in it, and so I do my best to make sure that they are on the ground and not actually what's covering the plants, because those holes could let the frost through. But you can see I just spread it all out here over the top of the plants. The wind is definitely not my friend here, but I use bricks to hold it down and in place. And we'll find out later today if they work or not. I'm editing the video before I go out and check on things. So I don't know yet if this works, but we'll find out together. So this is my attempts, at least, of protecting these squash plants to hopefully get a harvest out of these plants. The other thing that I really wanted to try and protect was my sweet potato vines. So if you've been with me over the course of the summer, you'll know I had a hard time when I planted my sweet potato vines. Sweet potatoes love the heat, but I learned this year that if you don't plant them until it's really hot outside, they really struggled just getting established and taking off, and I had to replant some of my sweet potatoes. So I ran out of my Agribon sheets, and so I'm just using a king size flannel sheet here to cover up as much of my sweet potato vines as possible, because I really want to get those extra couple weeks for the sweet potatoes to have to keep growing. So this is a little bit awkward here, definitely a little bit janky. Um, but you know, we just do the best with what we have, right? So that's what I'm doing here. My T-posts are a little bit in the way, but I just want my plants to be as protected as possible. So there we go. Guys, I'm sorry if it's really loud. I'm trying to protect the microphone a little bit from the wind. It's so windy out here. But we've picked everything that we can pick out of the garden. I picked one final bouquet in case tomorrow really is the end of things. And we've tried to protect the things that I really would like to get those last couple of weeks out of. So it's beautiful, right? I think we'll come back out here in the morning and assess what the situation is. Did we make it through the frost, or is it goodbye garden? But for now, I think we're gonna go inside and take a look at everything that we harvested. Well, you guys, here it is. What's potentially the last harvest of the year. I am counting on it being the last harvest, and if it's not, then that'll just be a bonus. But we got a nice amount of tomatoes. There are quite a few in there that are blushing, so I'm hopeful we're gonna have some yummy tomato sandwiches and stuff still. We'll just put those on the counter to ripen. We got some eggplants. Some of these are hilarious. They're just so cute and little, but they'll still cook up and feed us. A tiny little pile of green beans, a nice pile of spicy peppers, the cherry tomatoes that are blushing. And I have to tell you, this was the biggest surprise for me. I knew there were a lot of peppers on my sweet pepper plants, but once I got in there and started picking, I was just shocked that I filled this basket so full. We're definitely not going to want 4 diced green peppers this winter. So that's fantastic. And of course, the final thing, the flowers. And I'm really grateful to have what might be our last bouquet. If it's not, then that's great. But it's nice to have the beautiful colors along with all the green. So we will come back tomorrow morning and see if the garden's really done or not. All right, you guys, it's the next morning, so we're going to go assess the garden. It did not frost last night. Not at all. Maybe other people in my area got a frost, but my plants look exactly the same. So I'm going to turn around and give you guys a peek. There are still flowers. The pepper plants look the same as they did yesterday. Look at this. This is not a zinnia that went through a frost. But now I feel like I made the right call about leaving things like these tiny little tomatoes, because they should have a couple more weeks left. Well, you guys, thanks for hanging out with me on what turned out to be kind of an anticlimactic video. No frost. I'm grateful though, because that means some of those little tomatoes I left, they're going to get to keep getting larger for the next few weeks. All those green cherry tomatoes I didn't pick, they'll have some time they can ripen. So anticlimactic, but a good anticlimactic. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I'm so glad you were here, and I will see you next time. Bye.